It's that nerd Ryan here. Welcome to the review of The Flash. So I was actually gonna say this might have been my most anticipated film of this year. I think it actually is. Now that I'm looking ahead of what's coming out, I think this is actually maybe the second or third to last movie that I'm seeing in theaters this year, and I was mostly excited for it. I do want to put a disclaimer at the beginning. I was excited for Michael Keaton. I do not really support what was going on during the hiatus of this movie with Ezra Miller. That all that stuff and everything is a little too insane to even bring up in this video, even though I probably will during the spoiler thing because there's some jokes I cracked during the movie about it. And yeah, it kind of is complicated to discuss this movie without discussing that, but I'm going to try my best. Anyways, so we're going to kind of just do a quick what I think of the characters, the plot, and everything without spoilers, and then give it a rank, and then we'll get into spoiler talk. I'm going to try a different format for this. If you guys have seen it before, I'm not going to walk you through the entire movie. I'm just going to discuss points that I liked and disliked in the spoiler portion without holding back what I have to say. The plot recap is for movie night only, not for this. But yeah, so this movie honestly was a very fun, enjoyable movie. I thought that the plot kind of stuck pretty well to what Flashpoint was, with also giving it its own little twist and making it very fun and enjoyable. I also like the time travel logic in this, which we'll talk about in the spoiler portion. And I thought that the set pieces were actually pretty good callbacks to everything DC, not even just the DCEU, but I mean even callbacks to the original Batman movie, or the 1989 Batman movie, Man of Steel, Justice League, stuff like that. It's interesting that there's some set pieces that we got to see, some characters we got to see, and just all that other fun stuff that I don't want to talk about until we're at spoilers. I will say the CG was a little distracting, but not for the same thing. So I know that they came out and stated that the CG in this was purposely messy for the time travel scenes because it's supposed to be Barry's perspective. I'm fine with that, and I even thought about that during the movie without knowing about them saying that about it. I was like, oh, it's probably just his perspective of the timeline, so I'm not going to complain about the CG. What did bother me, which, I was complaining about this all day today, it's been a day since I saw the movie, but I will also say with this too, I don't know if this was actually a CG problem, just basically for the fact that I haven't seen a lot of movies with Ezra Miller in it. I mean, I've seen Perks of Being a Wallflower, all the DC films that he was in, so he wasn't a main focus in that, and most of the time he did have his cowl on. And also wasn't sharing the screen with himself. And the Harry Potter movies. And maybe I did feel like this in the Harry Potter movie, the Fantastic Beasts movies. Maybe I'm wrong. But there was moments in this when the two Barrys were standing next to each other, and it felt like one of them was CG and one of them was Ezra Miller. And my big issue is that we figured out how to get around that way back in the 1960s with Bewitched, yet we couldn't do it for this movie. again, I could be wrong. I mean, there's some moments in like John Wick where I feel like Keanu is CG, and it's moments that he's sitting there, and it's just maybe it's just sometimes Keanu has that face. Maybe Ezra has that face too, and my mind wasn't processing it right, but it was kind of just distracting to me. So the other stuff that I do want to state really quick, or the next thing I want to talk about is the characters. I thought both Barrys were good. The original timeline Barry, I liked him kind of being like the straight man to the second timeline Barry's goofy persona. And like they did kind of come off as brothers. It was very nice that they came off like brothers. And I will say, for the most part, the younger Barry CG, which again with the CG issue, it wasn't always timeline 2 Barry, it was timeline 1 Barry, and like switching between it. So when I say like them looking like they kind of de-aged Ezra Miller for timeline 2 Barry, they actually kind of had him look exactly like he did in Perks of a Wallflower, which either was makeup, just them not aging, or CG. Younger Barry looked as I'd imagine Ezra Miller looked back then, which was great. We also get Batman in this. All Batmen in this were great. Ben Affleck was good. Michael Keaton was amazing. Supergirl, I did feel... I mean, there is kind of an explanation of it in the plot, but I did feel that Supergirl was kind of wooden. Like, not very interesting, I guess. Because, I mean, you can knock on the Snyder versus Superman. I mean, Henry Cavill was a good Superman in my opinion, but he also did have like wooden moments and everything like that. The Supergirl in this was very deadpan. I felt like not emotional, nothing. I mean, she did have like emotional moments, but any line delivery was very kind of flat. But yeah, we also get the villain that's not really fully in the movie. Well, we get two villains. One Zod, but Zod's kind of just there for the sake of, and not in a bad way, but there for the sake of the timeline. So yeah, Zod's there. But then our real villain is, I guess they're calling him Dark Flash. I was sitting there saying, is that Savitar or Reverse Flash? What's going on? And they never really name it. I was kind of just calling him Savitar from the third season of the TV show because he kind of looked like it. We'll get into who that is during the spoilers. Even though we kind of knew the villain through the whole movie, I'm trying to say this without spoiling anything, the main villain barely being in it, I did feel was kind of strange for the movie, but it was also during one of the coolest scenes that the villain showed up. In my opinion, I know a lot of people are getting offended by that scene. We'll talk about that in spoilers, but I thought it was a great scene. But yeah, I mean, the character dynamics and everything I thought were great. Character interactions, fight scenes, action scenes were all done very well. Even the final battle was done very well. Which was a Man of Steel battle. It's not actually a final battle. Again, we'll get more into detail in spoilers. I just call it the final battle for a particular reason. But yeah, I thought the acting performances were very well done in this. Everybody in this, you could tell, actually had like care and heart for this movie. So I am going to give it a 8 out of 10. Like I said, some of the CG stuff was a little jarring when it shouldn't have been. And Supergirl was a little lackluster for me. So now I'm going to count down to 10 and we're going to do spoilers. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, last chance, 1. Alright, so we're going to talk about specific scenes that I thought stood out, that I liked, maybe disliked, and then we're going to talk about the villain and the big scene in this movie. So, I like how time travel was explained literally with spaghetti by Michael Keaton Batman. There's a lot, I realize there's a lot to do with spaghetti in this movie, weirdly enough. Because Barry's mom died because they forgot to crush tomatoes for the spaghetti sauce. Which is kind of weird. I was for sure thought it was going to be like a reverse slash scenario, and then I also thought at the end that Barry was going to actually have to go back and stab his mother or something. Obviously that doesn't happen. He just has a moment with his mom and then takes the tomatoes out of the cart that he originally put in the cart at the shopping experience before, and then changes the shelving so his dad can at least get out of jail, which does mess with the timeline again. But I do like the explanation of, like, you can change a point in time, and it doesn't branch off, it just creates a whole new reality. That really reminded me of one of my favorite video games of BioShock Infinite, and they basically have the same exact quantum physics in mind of there are constants, but there are so many variables. Constants being that Batman has to have an Alfred, at a point in that timeline, Batman and Supergirl have to die and the world has to end, and like stuff like that. Stuff that you can't change, but Batman's a different Bruce Wayne. Superman died, Supergirl was the Kryptonian on Earth. I just drew a blank. Marty McFly was not played by Michael J. Fox, he was played by Eric Stoltz. And I thought that was a really cool callback because, like, I don't know how many people know this, but Eric Stoltz was originally supposed to play Marty McFly, and they just figured that the screen test during, like, filming that he wasn't a good cut for this, which I was also, like, kind of laughing at because of the fact that, like, they finished filming this movie, everything happened with Ezra, and then fans were like, well, just put Grant Gustin in it. Which I do want to discuss this, and I should have discussed this in the non-spoiler part. I did see this movie with my girlfriend, and she enjoyed it. She just looked at me and she goes, they couldn't have used anybody else besides Ezra Miller. And she didn't mean it as a, I don't like what he's done. She just didn't like his performance. Their performance, I'm sorry. I actually really did. I thought it was a very good brother performance for Barry Allen. I feel like if we were to use Grant Gustin, or let's just say the guy from the Percy Jackson series or something like that, I don't think we would have gotten the same performance. I think, like, if we were to have Grant Gustin playing a 31-year-old version of himself and an 18-year-old version of himself, I don't think it would work well. I think Ezra Miller was able to have that range of being the, I've been through a lot, I don't really have a stable family, I've had to live life by myself, 31-year-old, and mom and dad do everything for me. I am a piece of crap 18-year-old in the same movie. I thought that was, like, we couldn't get that from anybody else. But yeah, I thought the whole Russia infiltration scene with Barry, and Batman was great. I thought everything Michael Keaton did in this movie I thought was great. I was at the edge of my seat, all excited and everything. There was some moments in this movie that felt like it was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the audience. And I feel like some of them were just like after the fact kind of funny, because there's a joke I cracked during when Younger Barry gets his powers and he starts like running around everywhere, and then he ends up phasing through the floor, being naked in front of his neighbor, and then also causing havoc downtown. I kind of went over to Sasha and I'm like, since when did Hawaii start looking like California? And like making a joke like that. And like there's like that, and then at the beginning of the movie he saves a bunch of babies and he throws one in a microwave, and I'm like, so that was the child endangerment charge. But like there's a part with Keaton where when I think it's the second time Bruce dies, because them going back in time trying to stop it, or Younger Barry doing that. And Barry's like, you have to come back. And it's like, that whole conversation feels like it's more of the audience talking to Keaton and Keaton responding of like, you have to come back. I did come back, but I'm done. like stuff like that. It's like, it kind of felt like that, you know? But also with that, there was a ton of other cameos in this movie. And we're going to get to the big cameo scene in a second, but like, we get Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman again for a couple minutes, and a hilarious scene where she's kind of like using the lasso of truth on Batman, and then Flash touches it, and then he admits that he's a virgin. We get that. We get a post-credit scene that I wasn't able to see with Aquaman. We get, of course, Ben Affleck Batman. We do get to see Superman. They don't show his face because the whole issue with Henry Cavill and everything of them bringing him back, then firing him for no reason. Well, a reason, but it's because they got bought out, but he was promised to stay. That's besides the point. So we basically get to see the whole Justice League in this. Then we also get to see who the new Batman of the timeline is, being George Clooney, which gave me a huge laugh. And then I was like, so it was Barry's fault for the Batman and Robin movie. I did just recently hear that it was supposed to be Keaton in that, and they changed their mind. I would have much rather have had Keaton there. I thought that would have been a lot better. But I also thought the whole part with George Clooney was hilarious. And I still thought it was good. It could have been better with Michael Keaton. But it was great to see, literally, I think, 4 Batman in this, although one being a CG Tarkin Leia situation of having Adam West, which now I guess we have to talk about the big cameo scene. So when the first Barry 1, let's do Spider-Man logic. Barry 1 is the Barry that we start at. Barry 2 is the 18-year-old Barry that just got his powers. So Barry 1 realizes that they're at a fixed point. No matter what they do, they can't save Bruce and Kara, and they can't save the world. The world's going to die. Barry 2 is refusing that, and he keeps trying to save them. And as that's happening, the timeline starts rupturing and destroying other timelines. This is when we find out that Dark Flash is Barry 2 in the future. And like, I realized that when Barry 2 got stabbed in the arm and had like a blade stuck in him, and then he got stabbed again another time, getting another piece of shrapnel. And it's like, okay, so he's Savitar or whatever. So they reveal it, and he's like, we're just so close, just let it happen. And no matter what, you're going to end up fixing the timeline anyways, so I have to kill you. As that's happening, we get to see these other timelines branching. And in that, we see Christopher Reeve's Superman along with Supergirl. Then we see Adam West Batman running around. We see Nick freaking Cage Superman. We see the original actor that played Superman back in the 50s. We get to see the original Jay Garrick in the Flash show that wasn't Jay Garrick. He was Zoom, but still, whatever. And we get to see, like, just all this, like, cool, like, callbacks and everything. People are getting offended that it's like, oh, you're using the Rogue One stuff of bringing back people that are dead. I mean, if it was to the point where, like, Christopher Reeve's Superman said something, or I know Adam West Batman said something, but it was, like, distorted and it was a line from the show. And I even think it was Robin that said something, not Batman. Then you hear, like, Cesar Romero Joker laugh. I thought with just showing them, that was cool. They didn't go out of their way to, like, Christopher Reeve Superman going, huh, what's going on here? Or, like, something like that. I thought that was good that they didn't do that. I kind of brought that up with Ghostbusters Afterlife, that they didn't have the one character I'm looking, Egon, say anything through the whole movie because the actor just passed away. I like that they did that for that. So that's my logic on why I like that scene. But yeah, and then Barry 2 sacrificing himself by killing himself, but not suicide, but you know what I mean. And then Barry fixing it, and then shifting the things to exonerate his dad. I was like, that's a way not to mess up the timeline, and I completely forgot the timeline logic there. And then seeing Clooney, like, blew my mind. But yeah, I thought that, like, all the cameos were good, done in well taste, and I felt like this was not just a Flash movie, but a celebration of DC altogether. Not just the DCEU, but just all of DC. But yeah, so I really enjoyed the movie. Highly recommend you watch it if you actually seriously just sat here and got a bunch of stuff spoiled without the plot. Dummy. Highly recommend it. I get there's controversy with this movie and everything. If you feel like you have to wait till it's on HBO Max or Redbox or something, I completely understand. But definitely check out this movie when you get the chance. So that